So in the last session, we learnt about the major process of agriculture, 3 stages, and important points to be noted from them. Later, we understood land is one of the problem we are facing to have a higher yield. So why is it so? We have gone through land reforms that has happened in 4 different stages. We understood the 4 stages. Now we'll understand in depth about it. So how this Indian agriculture got affected at independence and before independence. So if we see, Indian agriculture got ruined during British era. Why? Because of colonization, commercialization of agriculture, extraction of surplus from peasantry. So these were the 3 major problems. Later, rise of rentiers by landlords. Then we have unreasonable burden on Indian peasantry, absentee landlordism, sub-inflation. So these are the later problems. So now we'll see conditions of Indian agriculture during the independence. During independence, how was our agriculture? So there was high taxation. Already I told it was commercialized and more extraction from peasantry and because of colonization. So high taxation, colonial rulers imposed heavy taxes on agriculture. Early permanent settlements with zamindars fixed high land revenue rates. Later temporary settlements with peasants, Raitwari system, periodically increased the revenue rates. Land revenue collection often equal 75% of the net produced during crisis. So 75% also they used to extract. By the 20th century, land revenue was more than half of the colonial state's total revenue. So high taxation was there because of different systems, zamindari and raitwari. Mostly 75% of the produce was taken during crisis. So this is a key term, high taxation, growth of landlordism and rack renting. So widespread absentee landlordism and sub-infeudation in zamindari areas. In the sense, zamindaris were not directly collecting the whatever taxation or revenue, but by middlemen. So because then we'll say it as absentee landlordism. High rents sustained multiple layers of intermediaries. As I mentioned, it was like different layers of intermediaries who sucked the blood of farmers. In Raitwari areas, tenancies and rack renting were rampant due to population pressure on land and lack of alternative employment. Rents often exceed 50% of the crop, reaching up to 85% in some seasons and regions. Landlords mostly paid land revenue, leaving tenants to bear production cost. So production cost will be on whatever farmers, but the revenue will go to landlords. That too because of growth of landlordism and there is a multiple intermediaries. So this is again a key term, growth of landlordism and rack renting. Then we have indebtedness. So it is like more loans has been taken. Extreme peasant indebtedness with 93% of credit needs met by private money lenders. We used to kind of like give loans for more interest rate. According to RBI report, it was 93% from private money lenders. The RBI reported in 1954 that cultivators paid high interest rate on debt. Total burden of interest payments and rent was enormous, limiting agricultural investment. So they were able to not invest much. So the key terms here is high taxation. Immediately taxation, you can talk this also, indebtedness, because related to tax and then debt, right? Then we have growth of landlordism and rack renting. Then comes the need for land reforms, right? Before that, some more points I missed up. So that lack of agricultural investment, I told because of indebtedness, they were not able to invest more on the agriculture. So because of this, land anyway gets spoiled, right? So then in return, agriculture output declines. That's actually a chain. So I'll just read out. Minimum investment in agriculture by both the colonial state and landlords. Traditional techniques and tools persisted, with 97% of plough being wooden. So even now I can see like wooden plows. Use of improved seeds and fertilizers was extremely low. So they can't invest in the agriculture. Long-term stagnation led to the decline in yield per capita of agricultural output. Between 1991 and 1941 were per capita agricultural output declined by 14%. Food grain output 24%. By independence, India faced acute food shortages necessitating large food grain imports. So this was a problem. So what happened? Initially, high tax, middlemen, later indebtedness. So you can't invest. Indebtedness leads to lack of investment. Obviously, decline in output. This was the cycle. Then for the need of land reforms. So historical context, land commodification has exacerbated social inequalities. So because of this, we have social inequalities also. Historical systems, zamindari concentrated land in the hand of a few. During zamindari and all, it was like complete land belonged to zamindaros. So lower castes historically had minimal land. So there was no proper land distribution. Land distribution created social inequalities. That was the historical context. Then according to legal framework, Article 39 and 39B and C, I already mentioned this before. So there should be no focus of wealth at one person or entity, or there should be equal distribution of resources and land. So according to that, economic necessities like credit access, secure land titles improve access to loans. We saw one of the problem is lack of insurance and a credit because there is no documentation. So that is the same case here. Economic growth, insufficient land use boost, so it will not give a productivity and growth. Stable income, equitable land distribution, reduce income instability. So we'll get a stable income. Owner cultivation, it encourages better land management and productivity. Sub infeudation addresses exploitation from multiple and leases, okay, land leases. So then also for social, see whenever we talk about agriculture, we have to see about different sectors. In mains paper, it is very important to touch different sectors of the society. So we have seen historical context, legal framework. If you can't memorize like that, you memorize the subjects of UPSC itself. History related, okay. Then polity related, what will you talk in polity? You talk about acts, laws, judiciary, executive, right? So legal framework. Then economy, economic necessities. Then comes social. Society is the subject for you, right? Social status, land ownership influences social status and power. That is what we are talking about, societal inequality, right? Reforms can democratize land ownership and reduce social hierarchies. So if there is proper reformation, there will be proper status spread also. Then comes science and technology subjects. See, technological empowerment. So land records, digital systems enhance transparency and reduce disputes. That's why digitalization of land is happening. Land use, GIS and remote sensing, improve land management, and farmer support technology aids in crop management and decision making also. For different technologies like precision farming and all, we can use sensor usage and all. Okay. After that, so because of these needs, we have seen all the sectors where it is impacting. Because of that, pre-independence, there was some reforms. Legacy of the national and peasant movements. So pre-independence started with the peasant movement. Okay. In 1920s, it's related to history point of view. Okay. More of history point of view. The 1920s saw closer ties between peasant movement and the national movement. So during 1920s, remember 1920s which movement was going on? It was non-cooperation movement, isn't it? So it was combinedly having a close ties with peasant management or movements and the national movement with significant events like Bardoli Satyagraha. Okay, Bardoli Satyagraha related to peasant movement. In 1930s and 1940s saw further radicalization and leftist influence within the national movement, bringing peasant issues to the forefront. So later also in during civil disobedience movements, which include no tax, no rent campaigns in 1930s to 40. 1931 Karachi session of the Congress included peasant rights in the right of a fundamental rights and economic program. So in 1931 Karachi session, so we made this one of the fundamental right. What was the right? Peasant right is a fundamental right in 1931 Karachi session. 1935, so 1935 Kisan conference called for the abolition of zamindari. Which was that conference? Kisan conference in 1935. Later formation of All India Kisan Sabha in 1936 influenced agrarian policies through Kisan Manifesto. So we have All India Kisan Sabha formed in 1936. Okay, these are the historical stories related thing till 1936. After that, what about Congress agrarian programs? In 1936, Congress also held a session at Pyq. So it demanded reduction in rent and revenue, the abolition of feudal dues, fixity of a tenure, debt moratorium and cheap credit, living wages and cooperative farming. So 1937 Congress election manifesto. So Congress manifesto also had for peasant issues, peasantry poverty, unemployment, indebtedness due to repressive land tenure and revenue system. This was their manifesto as well to reduce all these problems. So then we have implementation and challenges. During 28 months between 1937-1939, when Congress formed ministries in most provinces. So I told Congress manifesto 1937. So they won. And during those policy formation, efforts were made to implement the agrarian program despite limiting powers and the need balanced anti-imperialist unity. So they also tried to make, okay, legislations were passed in various provinces addressing tenancy rights and indebtedness. So legislation also passed for tenancy rights and indebtedness. Example, Bihar passed a tenancy legislations in 1937 and 1938, reducing rents by 25% and granting occupancy right. Similar laws were enacted in United Provinces, Bombay, Central Provinces, Northwestern Frontier, Orissa and Madras. Through British governors sometimes resisted. Though they are resisting, provinces implemented. Laws regulating money lenders and providing debt reliefs were also passed. So they also tried their maximum is what they are saying. They mentioned 25% of tax, rent reduction. So they focused on tenancy right and indebtedness, right? So post-war and post-independence movement. Once after independence, we already seen the growth. From 1920s we started. So from 1920s, what was there? In 1920s, we saw peasant movement start such as Bardoli Satyagraha. Okay. Then 1930 to 40, the civil disobedience. Along with that, Karachi session is known for it. Farmer rights, well mentioned in Karachi session, very important. 1931. Later we have a Kisan conference and then All India Kisan Sabha in 1936 and Congress manifesto in 1937. Accordingly, before that, Pyq session also was held. Okay. Then post-war and pre-independence movements. After World War II, peasant movements like the Telangana and Tebaga movements emerged with renewed vigor, demanding zamindari abolition and settlement. So we notice that post pre-independence, during World War, we had Telangana and Tebaga movement. Tebaga movement is in Bengal, West Bengal, and Telangana is in Telangana today. 1946, during the post-independence initiatives. 1946, province elections saw Congress victories and leading to the formation of interim government, and they also tried. So they formed a draft bill for abolition of a zamindari system. So All India Congress Committee in 1947 appointed a committee to draw economic program based on 1945 election manifesto. So again they have a manifesto in 1945 that is also related to 4% reforms. All India Congress Committee has also got set up. All India Congress Committee. The Economic Program Committee headed by Jawaharlal Nehru made recommendation for agriculture including the elimination of intermediaries, cooperative farming, experiments and land sealing. So from that time only we had a cooperative farming concept. Okay. So All India Congress Committee, Economic Program Committee headed by Nehru. So then abolition of a zamindari. By 1949, post-independence it is, various provinces introduced zamindari abolition bill. The Constituent Assembly ensured these reforms by framing the constitution to prevent legal challenges by zamindars. Despite initial legal challenges, Constitution Amendment in 1951-1955 solidified the reforms. Like there was an article called 31, you just have a look into it, making a compensation principle non-justiciable. By mid-1950s, resistance from zamindars weakened and the abolition process was largely completed by 1956. 20 million tenants become landowners. Such a good move due to abolition of zamindars. So we abolished zamindars, around 20 million tenants become landlords. In the sense landowners, not landlords. Yeah. So weakness of zamindari abolition. There was certain loopholes also. See, we didn't say everyone become. We said 20 million. Why other left out? Because loopholes in the legislation. Personal cultivation clause. Zamindars could retain land declared under personal cultivation. The definition of personal cultivation was vague, allowing non-tillers, supervisors and those providing capital to claim cultivator status. So it was like whoever till will get the land. So they didn't say who is personal cultivation. So this was a loophole. Initially, no size limit was imposed on lands declared as personal cultivation in states like Uttar Pradesh, Bihar and Madras. And there was no limit for a size of cultivation. So that was one more loophole. They didn't mention who is what is personal cultivation and what is the limit of that. That size also they didn't mention. That was a loophole. Evictions and tenant retentions. Tenant evictions. Zamindars evicted tenants to declare larger areas as personal. So they didn't give for tenancy then. Evictions and retentions. The primary affected small and less secure tenants, leading to significant tenant evictions even after land sealing laws were introduced. So even those tenants couldn't get the land to till. So that was a problem. Absentee landowners. Absentee zamindars retained large tracts of land, contradicting the aim of a land reform. Positive is investment by the landowners in agriculture. They invested, but most of them didn't become landowners. Tenants even lost the tenancyship. Okay, eviction and retentions. Resistance. So parliamentary obstruction, legislative, landlords delayed the passing of a zamindari abolition bill through prolonged debates. So they actually delayed the process. That was a problem. So select committee referral and numerous amendments in states like Uttar Pradesh and Bihar, significant time elapsed between bill introduction and law enactment. So this gap was used by the zamindars or the middlemen to get the land on their name. Judicial challenges also were there. Landlord frequently contested the constitutionality of the laws in court, reaching up to Supreme Court. In Bihar, landlords obstructed implementation even after losing the Supreme Court twice by refusing a hand over land records. So even there was a judicial challenges. Executive, lower level revenue officers, often former zamindar agents, colluded with landlords to skew law implementation in their favor. This collusion made law enforcement challenging and delayed the reform process. So three sectors also there was problems: judicial, legislative and executive. So these were the things. Despite resistance, zamindari abolition was largely completed within a decade of the republican formation, except in some part like Bihar, some parts, large feudal estates were dismantled. The primary beneficiaries were occupancy tenants or upper tenants who became landowners, while big landlords lost the bulk of their lands. So partially it was completed, partially there was loopholes. We have seen in the three sectors, and also we have seen there was like cultivator, a person who is cultivator was not defined, and the size also not defined. Tenancy also lost by tenants. So these are some of the problems. So next, okay, continuing the tenancy right to resume land. So post zamindari abolition, again we continued for a tenancy rights. Okay, tenancy persisted in lands declared under personal cultivation by former zamindars. Tenancy also continued in a land subleased by former occupancy tenants who became landowners. At independence, of the area was under zamindari tenure, the other half under raitwari, with landlordism and insecure tenancy prevalent. Yeah. So three objective of tenancy legislation were security of a tenure, rent reduction. So there are some tenants also left out, right? For them, there should be a security of tenure, guarantee security of tenure to tenants who cultivated land continuously for 5 number of years. Not for everyone, for 5 number of years who cultivates, for them there should be a guarantee. Security of a tenure. Then we have a rent reduction. It should be fair level. So 1/4 and 1/6 of a gross produce value. So right to ownership. Grant tenants the right to acquire ownership of a lands they cultivated at a price below market price. Okay. Typically the multiple of a annual rent. So this was the thing. So because of this, see, we already saw zamindari abolition. Then we have seen tenancy reforms also, their ownership, securing their tenure, rent reduction, and also kind of right to ownership. So it was successful in some parts. We see such best examples. One such is Kerala. Massive program for conferment of title to hutment, dwellers and tenants, launched with peasant organization active participation. It was successful in Kerala. West Bengal, Operation Barga, launched in July 1978, aimed to trigger sharecroppers securing their legal rights. Significant increase in recorded Bargadhars with active rural poor participation, neutralizing lower level revenue official impediments. Innovative orientation camps fostered cooperation between agricultural workers, sharecroppers and officials. So Operation Barga. These were the success stories also. We have success stories. So there are partial acquisition of ownership. There is a partial achievement. Some partial achievements are in Gujarat, Maharashtra and other states, similar trends. Okay. So these were partial. Good also we have seen, and partial also we are seeing now. So then comes the zamindari abolition is over. Tenancy rights is over. Now land ceiling. So we'll see what is this.